You can ask me anything. I hate asking questions, so I totally understand. So the question was, if how far was I into college when I neglected my treatments and had to go in the hospital? So, trying to strategically answer this. No. So when I went off to college, I went away from home. It was only about an hour and a half away from Denver. At the time, the only thing available for airway clearance was hands-on CPT, which it's a whole new world. If I had had the vest or even an acapella or something else, it would have been a whole different world. So I was dependent on this 100-year-old nurse in the infirmary for my CPT. So it would have been really more effective for me to just throw myself against a wall. So I mean, it's hard to say, like, between my weight, which I was super, super skinny at the time, and just airway clearance, I would drive home like every other weekend. My mom would just beat me all weekend, and I would go back to school for a week or two and be okay. So I think I made it through my first year, but maybe over the holidays did IVs. It was a really long time ago. But I think, as I grew up, I certainly had hospitalizations fairly consistently. So I know my sophomore year of college, I missed a couple patches. And then actually, unfortunately, because I couldn't get good airway clearance, and just because that became daunting, after 2 years, I actually moved home to finish up. So that certainly changed. I mean, because I needed extra help, I certainly changed what I did. But I took relatively good care of myself because I had failed at it earlier. And so I learned when I was about 13 a little better. Not that I was perfect, but I certainly knew what I needed to do more so and sort of understand that cause and effect sort of ratio. But I think you have to stumble. And I can't imagine, I mean, I don't know where my mom got the wisdom to be so brave to let me stumble. So after eighth grade, she sent me to France with my French club. And so the chaperones were supposed to sort of do CPT. Again, should have just thrown myself against a wall. And I was gone for 30 days. And I was in charge of all my meds and taking care of myself. And I have to tell you, I failed miserably. I got home from France, and I had lost 10 pounds, which I was already super crazy skinny, so that wasn't good. And I went home for 5 hours, and then we went to the hospital. And all I can tell you is that as we were driving to the hospital, I did say, Mom, no matter what happens, because it was not looking good. I said, don't worry, it was totally worth it. And so I think as a parent, and I barely have houseplants, so I'm not responsible for anything. I think you have to be brave enough to let us not be afraid. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I think that's what's really important, is that my mom never planted that seed of fear in me, so I never assumed that something bad would happen. Things certainly did, but I think she probably talked to everybody but me about that. So I think as a parent, that was one of the gifts she gave me of living with my illness, is to allow me that opportunity to do stuff that probably scared the heck out of her, but she never let me know she was afraid. And I think that confidence, that gave me the confidence to not worry. So I think if any of that makes sense, it's one of the things as an adult, I understand what she did. She's very like Jedi mind trick. I didn't know she was doing it at the time. But now in retrospect, I'm like, I should have been terrified to go to France for 30 days by myself without a clue. But I just was like, oh, so much fun. So I think that's really important. And I can't imagine being the parent of me and seeing things not work and being like, I should have protected you, this shouldn't have happened. it can happen even if you're right there. Unfortunately, that's just CF. So it's just, you have to allow us to have that confidence. You have to allow us to fall, which hopefully we bounce back up, which most of the time I do. Not as high anymore, but I still bounce back. Any other questions, thoughts?
How did you get to be not so super duper skinny?
How did I not get so super duper skinny? So at one point in my life, I was eating about 6,500 calories a day. And then through my 20s, my weight got potentially better, like a bit better. I still ate like a football player. Like we'll go out to eat and my boyfriend's very health conscious. He'll order a salad and I'll order a burger. And like a Diet Coke and I'll order a regular Coke. The funniest thing is the waitress always tries to give me the salad and the Diet Coke. And I'm like, no, give me the burger. Like, you got it wrong, sister, give me the burger. So the good news, bad news is that the women in my family, once we turn 30, start to gain weight. So that genetic component of my life outweighed my CF. So I had some good genetics going for me. And I think everything just sort of stabilized a bit more. I got sort of through puberty and the changes and got more into a routine. My weight, I don't worry about my weight anymore. But it certainly was one of the worst challenges I faced as a teenager. And growing up and as a teenager, it was brutal. I mean, it would be like a battle royale over the dinner table sometimes. My mom would be like, 2 more bites. I'm like, no. She'd be like, 3 more bites. And so, I mean, and we were very fortunate that, whatever I needed to eat, we had the ability to, if I had a double bacon cheeseburger, like, desire, I would eat, like, she would get me 6 in the hope that I would eat 2. So I was very lucky, but it was daunting. Plus, I was also motivated, as I was very skinny. The challenge of not getting 2 feedings. I'm really stubborn, and one of my doctors once told me I should be a lawyer because I would negotiate my way through any treatment plan I disagreed with. This is always the part I blush when there's healthcare team people here, so I'm just gonna look at you. But I think, I think I was willing to challenge them, but I also knew that it was up to me. If I said no to what they were suggesting, then I was responsible for the calories to be put in my body in some other way. And so I just made that decision, and I was lucky to have the support to do that. And I'm really competitive and really stubborn, which I think is sort of a general trait with those of us with CF. And so it's like, give me my goal, tell me what I have to do, and I will hit it. If I don't, then I will do what you want me to, but you have to give me a chance to try to change that. So I think part of it's just my body settled down, I stopped growing. I think genetically, that trait of women in my family to gain weight just helped out against my CF genetic trait. And so it was sort of a combination of all those things. Any other questions? Oh, about children, having children or not having children? That was it, or?
That was it. Basically, your thought process about, whether you all had any conversations, when do you start, who's the best person to talk to?
To have children or not. So, actually, this is kind of a funny story. Well, funny for me, probably not for my doctor. So when I was 18 and heading off to college, I was still seeing my pediatric pulmonologist, who really only liked to talk about lungs. And so he's like, right before I was heading off to school, he's like, you're heading to college. I'm like, yes. He's like, don't get pregnant. And I was like, going to college, you get pregnant? That is not something I saw in the brochure. I think certainly it's a different time now than, and certainly with my disease and where things were and sort of what they projected as my prognosis and sort of longevity. It didn't ever seem like the right answer for me. I so admire the people that are willing to make that decision to have children. But for me, it never quite seemed like the right thing to do for me. And that was after numerous discussions. And I also think because of where I stood with my lung disease and sort of where we stood in general with CF, it sort of became a pre-thought conclusion that wasn't a great plan. I think things are very different now. But I think the thought that I had was that I may, sort of get through the pregnancy and do all that and be fine, but that at some point, I wouldn't be there. And it didn't feel like the right choice for me. And I think it's been an interesting, as I've gotten older and my friends have had children, I think that's been a really interesting thing for me to have to sort of figure out and sort through, because it's not something I ever thought I would have to figure out. And I do, in all honesty, I don't think I think it just my mindset was to not ever have children, and I don't have any sort of regrets or worries about that. The one thing I have to say that I think is sort of poignant or sort of a sticking point or a bit tender of a spot is just that knowing that my mom will never be a grandmother. And I think thinking beyond myself and sort of that, and certainly I have my peers that are having children, and then certainly my mom's peers are all our grandparents. I think that's a bit painful, but for myself, it's totally was the right decision. But I don't feel bad, but it's a poignant point.
How has your CF, I have a pretty big mouth. Having said that about children, I'm just thinking about my own personality, and because of my life's journey, there's enough things that sometimes keep us from allowing ourselves to have relationships with people for fear of being hurt again, or those different things. So in your case, or with people with CF period, from the time you're a child, does this affect your ability to establish friendships? And you have a boyfriend. I think I would be afraid to even do that if it were me, and that's all I have, but you would never have gone to France.
I think I actually get that question a lot, which, another thing my family did is that it never dawned on me that I was a high-risk friend or partner or, I was married briefly for a couple years, so I've lived the American dream, I got divorced, but everybody should. I don't let CF stop me from anything. But I think that there is an inherent risk in revealing CF to someone, because it's a lot to deal with. And I think you also have to be willing to give whomever you reveal that to the space to sort of work through their worries. I've been with my boyfriend, we've been together 18 years. And so we've been together a super duper long time. And I can tell you he's in a much different place today than he was the first 5 years of our relationship. And his willingness to sort of accept and grow and understand CF and those challenges have been really good. I think also those people that sort of freak out about it, you have to be willing to give them space and understand. And I think it's not something you should hide. And I think my mom and my family in general, like I said, never gave me the thought or intention or planted the seed that someone shouldn't be friends with me because of that. Do I ever feel the responsibility, though, knowing that at some point I inflict worry or fear or that sense of potential loss is something that weighs heavily on me. You know, knowing that that's there is hard, but I think I've actually been thinking about that a lot lately because I was quite sick this fall and got this virus, and I scared myself a little bit, and certainly it worried some of my friends. And I think I always used to try to protect, and I still do try to protect everyone from sort of the ugly side or how I'm truly feeling. But I've come to understand that if my friend is sick, I worry about her. If my boyfriend, Mark, has a migraine, I worry about how I can help him. So granted, it has huge repercussions on a bigger scale for me, but that's part of just being a person and a human, is that connection and worry. And it is hard to know that at some point, that there may be a sense of loss or that sense of worry or fear. But I think, again, it goes back to how I stand with my illness, to make it okay for everybody else. And that I have to realize that I've also understood that by me not always fully sharing and trying to protect people, I'm also protecting myself from other people's big sad doe eyes, like, oh, I hate that. I'm not so good at that part. But I have to be willing to, I worry about my friends, and if they worry about me, I have to be willing to receive that. But it's really hard. You don't ever want to be seen as weak, and you don't ever want to cause pain. So I'm still learning to figure that part out. But I had someone once tell me that they wouldn't want their daughter, if we'd been little kids at the same time, that they wouldn't have wanted us to be friends because they wouldn't want their daughter to be upset about whatever CF may do. And it was a healthcare professional, and I literally couldn't talk for a second, just because I think you can't guarantee anything with anyone. And I think that opportunity to have someone in your life and love and be with, whether it's friends or whomever, and if you do have that sense of loss, even as hard as it is, it's a good thing, because that means they were important to you. Now, knowing that you're the person that might cause that pain is a little bit hard. I'm getting better about not being on all the time, but it's hard because, again, you don't want those big sad doe eyes. And so asking for help or doing those things, I've had to be better about that. And now that I'm a grown-up at 44, I'm finally getting good at it. Not good at it, I'm at least doing it. Maybe I should put it that way. So there's a lot, it's very sticky, and there's a lot more to living with CF than just taking your pills and doing your treatments. Like I said, it affects everything and every relationship. I mean, I was talking actually with Paula yesterday, and I'm like, on an airplane, do I tell somebody? It's like, oh, what do you do for your job? Well, I talk about living with cystic fibrosis. Oh, really? Are you like a nurse? No, I have CF. And instantly, but I don't ever do that, so I'm in sales. I'm in sales, and that makes me be quiet. But I think, again, it goes back to being comfortable myself and understanding that not everybody has that bandwidth, that ability to be okay, and not take it personally, which is really hard. But I know I'm sort of over time, so I want to be cognizant. I'll be here a bit more if there's a break. I'm happy to answer any questions. But again, thank you for your questions and the invitation to come and speak. Take care.